From the beginning of the formation of the Nazi Party, Rudolf Hess played an important role as a proud supporter, a close confidant, and eventually became the right-hand man of Hitler himself. Hess remained at Hitler's side as the Nazi regime gained strength. Yet since Hess lacked leadership and initiative, he fell out of favor with Hitler. In an attempt to regain approval from the Führer, Hess embarked on a non-sanctioned peace mission to Scotland. The British, Hitler, and the Nazis, and even those during the Nuremberg trials, claim insanity and mental issues. Yet once he is imprisoned in Spandau, his mind is clear and sharp. Hess's professor Karl Haushofer instilled in him the idea of Lebensraum, or the expansion of Germany's borders for living space. These ideas were communicated later on in Hitler's book Mein Kampf, which Hess dictated while they were both in prison after the failed beer hall putsch in Munich 1923. Hess remained at Hitler's side and became Deputy Führer in 1933. During his time as Deputy Führer, Hess signed off on anti-Semitic legislation, including the Nuremberg Laws of 1935. These laws stripped Jews of their rights in Germany and was one of the first major steps towards racial purification. Hess began to fall out of favor with the Führer due to his lack of initiative. He then took matters into his own hands to regain good standing with Hitler. In doing so, on May 10, 1941, Hess took a solo flight to Scotland in order to negotiate peace with the British. A witness who saw Hess land that day shares his thoughts on the situation.
Hess didn't want a war on two fronts. That was the conclusion we reached. We didn't think he was mad. We thought he was there with a purpose.
Hess then spent many years as a British POW. After the end of the war, at the Nuremberg trials, people believed Hess to be either completely insane or suffering from amnesia. Psychologists were then brought in to assess his competency to stand trial and came to the conclusion that he could not defend himself. Hess then addressed the crowd, admitting to have faked this so-called insanity.
In order to forestall the possibility of my being pronounced incapable of pleading, my memory will again respond to the outside world.
Hess's confession surprised the courtroom and demonstrated that he was not plagued with amnesia, but could still possibly be mentally ill because of his sudden change in demeanor. Now that Hess was deemed able to stand trial, he was convicted to life in prison and transported to Spandau prison in Berlin.
But Hess I saw, maybe 4 to 5 times per year, either as acting hospital commander or I went as another guest of the hospital commander. And the routine was that the first thing you did was you were escorted into the area where Hess's cell was. You were brought out of the cell, and then you did a physical examination on him. The thing about it is the administration of the prison changed every month. It went, I don't know, I can't remember the exact sequence, but every single month it changed. British 1 month, French, the Russians, every single month. So the military power that had charge of him for that particular month wanted to show the incoming administrators that Hess was in good health and he was being turned over in good health. So it just, rotated every single month. Every time I saw him, I can certainly, say he was mentally competent because he would answer all my questions in English. Now, I was supposed to address him as prisoner number 7, but I never did. I just called him Herr Hess. And nobody ever said anything.
Hess spent the rest of his life in Spandau from 1946 up until his suicide in 1987. He died at the age of 93.
How was he mentally when you saw him?
And when I saw him that last time in April 1987, he was as mentally competent and clear as he was from the day I saw him in 1971.